Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Thank you all for being here this morning, and welcome. If you did not get a bulletin when you came in, I know Terry's got some of those in the back if you'd like one. This will have our announcements for the week and the outline for today. Obviously, our normal church scheduled things this week. Church now at 10:30 with our children's classes, as we always do. Wednesday night at 7, we'll be having our adult, youth, and kids Bible studies. And today is Susan's birthday. So this coming Saturday is Todd's birthday. So happy birthday to Todd. And then tomorrow, Tony and Michaela have an anniversary. So happy anniversary to Tony and Michaela. Why I'm here to remind you. So another thing, discipleship makeups need to be done by the end of August, which is next Sunday. So please get any outstanding lessons done, because if they are not done by then, my plan is to suspend anyone being involved in ministry until you have them completed, and that is going to be across the board. So please get those done. If you choose to continue in ministry, please get those done. The list is still out there in the foyer on the credenza by the TV. If you need to check and see which ones I don't have marked for you, but please make sure you get those done this week. Listen to them in your car, pull up the YouTube videos or something. Just make sure we're getting those done. And then coming up in 2 weeks from today is our church anniversary. We're going to be 11 years old, so we're very excited about that. We'll be having baptism on that day, as well as baby dedications that day. So we have a couple of new babies with us this morning. So if you guys did not meet Penelope and Marianne Tully, so they are with us this morning making their debut. They are just precious, and so congratulations again to Megan and Benjamin and your family. And so I'm not sure, I think I was out of town on Mother's Day. It's normally when we do baby dedications, but if we have another baby that needs to be dedicated that was born this year, then we can certainly do so. He's like a giant compared to these two little ones. So she's only 6 months old, and she's like, good grief, these tiny little things. As far as I know, one was 5 pounds and some change, one was 6 pounds and some change when they were born. Is that right? So great job to both of you for getting that done. Megan, I know you did most of the work, if not all the work, but still. It's not very many people that can say they've grown 2 humans at the same time inside of their own body. And so congratulations. We're very happy for you guys, very proud of you, and those beautiful babies. Benjamin, we're glad you're here too. So yeah. And all of your contribution to that. So that's some things that we're planning on doing on Anniversary Sunday. We'll be taking testimonies as well. So if anybody has anything you'd like to say about what our church, the kind of impact our church has made in your life, or just kind of general testimonies that day, that'll be a good day for it. And then on Friday and Saturday, this September 19th and 20th, we are having a ladies' getaway. So check in with Susan or probably any of the ladies, or just look at the group me. I get the ladies' group me. I guess there's lots of information there. And I know the ladies are looking forward to that. So I think that is it as far as announcements go. So yes, ma'am. All right. Fantastic. All right. Thank you for that. Yeah, so then I think we can let our kids and teenagers wander off at this point. They don't just wander off, they go to a predisposed location for a class. And so I think Susan and Terry have the elementary class today. They have a room to go to get their learning on. And just so you know, now that we're going to have new babies and stuff, and lots of them in the church, we have another one coming September, October. So we always are going to need some more. I'm sorry? October 30th? 3rd. Yes, so September, October, into September, beginning of October. Um, Always going to need some more help watching these little tiny babies because they cannot do anything by themselves except squeal. So um, I'm going to say this on behalf of the teenagers that just kind of left. They didn't just kind of leave. They were told they could go to the room where they normally meet. Wednesday night, I had the very distinct pleasure and honor of working with our teenagers because Steve was here doing missions night. And during that time, as the pastor, I can just kind of do what I want most of the time. So I was talking to them about their interest in ministry and their interest in discipleship and things like that. And we had a couple of very interesting questions that I just gave them a chance to just ask me questions if they wanted to. And so we had 6 young people that were there Wednesday night. And of those 6, all 6 of them said that, yeah, if the adults aren't going to do it, we will be very happy to step up and learn how to run the technology in this church because we grew up with it. We know a lot of it already. And so there's absolutely nothing that we probably can't do. And so we can look for them to start. I told them to start asking questions to the people that are in charge of these particular ministries. But I'm telling you that, A, because I'm very proud of our young people. Just so you know, very proud of our young people. I think 5 of them were interested in doing some sort of technology, and 1 was interested in joining the praise team. And so I'm like, that's fantastic. So, but she was like, but we've already got a lot of people on the praise team, so do we really need somebody else on the praise team? She plays an instrument, but it's not a guitar. But here's the catch. The catch is my encouragement to you guys as grown adults that have all finished discipleship, that if these 6 young people are going to start getting involved in ministry, they're going to need to take discipleship, which means I'm going to need 6 people to sign up to have the very difficult task of coordinating schedules with a teenager that can't drive so that you can meet with them to do discipleship with them so that they can learn the same lessons, so that they can be on the same page, so that they can continue to be, not grow into it, they can continue to be useful and important members of this church. And so I've heard pastors say that, well, our children are the church of the future. And I disagree with that. Our children are the church now because they are just as important, if not more so, to the church than I am. Because that's where their life is. Life is in our youth. And so they've got the energy. We have the experience, but they have the energy. All right. And so, and let's see, of that, there were 4 guys and 2 ladies, and 2 young ladies that were looking at that. And we had some that were gone Wednesday night as well. So just expect that we're going to have 6, 7, 8, maybe as many as 10 young people that need to be discipled. And I ain't doing it. I've already discipled like 30 people this year. I don't know. Somebody else's turn, right? But just so you know, I'm very proud of our young people, very proud of our teenagers here, and they are excited and they're ready to get involved in ministry and start serving the Lord more so than they already have been. Because if you guys didn't know, every Wednesday night after we're done with Bible study and discipleship, our teenagers serve in this church by simply taking out the trash. If you didn't know that, they do that every week, and it's great. And they're happy to do it. Yeah, and they do it with a smile on their face, and they're happy to do it. And so I praise God for that. And so just be aware that I'm going to start asking some folks, hey, would you be willing to disciple this person? And the caveat also, there's a lot of conditions, right? I'm going to put a lot of conditions on this because, again, pastor can do that. I'm going to ask that it not be somebody from their immediate family that disciples them, because I need them to have that kind of experience outside of just their family, because it is a church thing, not just a family thing. All right? So be prepared for that too. So some of you that don't have a kid in the youth group, you may need to adopt one for 13 weeks. So, all right, and I'll be happy to answer questions about that as we continue through. But we're very excited about that. All right, I think I can start preaching now. It's always one of the challenges of getting through the announcements on a Sunday morning, because there's nothing like overtly spiritual or inspired by God to say, we're having church today, and we're having church on Wednesday, and it's somebody's birthday. So turn in your Bibles, if you would, to the book of Ruth. I am going to deviate a little bit from the study of the book of Judges, but you'll find out why. If you read Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, I always try to include the book of Ruth when I preach through the book of Judges, because Ruth 1:1 says, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land." And so the context for the book of Ruth is it happens during the book of Judges. We don't know exactly when. I don't know who was the judge at the time. I don't know, but it was a time of prosperity, and it was a time where they had plenty of food, and they were not under attack from anybody that we're aware of, because none of that's recorded in the book of Ruth. So there must have been a judge at somewhere in the midst of all of this. We just don't know who it was. Pick one. I don't really care. You guys just decide on your own which judge you think would be appropriate here. But again, I'm going to start with Psalm 144, verse 3, which says, "Lord, what is man, that thou hast taken knowledge of him, or the son of man, that thou makest account of him?" And on your bulletin, some of you got the corrected ones, but this should actually be Who Am I number 5.1, and I tried to correct some of those, but if you didn't get a corrected one, I forgot to change it last night when I was redoing this, so if you printed one from home, it's going to say 4.4 again, and it should be 5.1. Because we're going to be in Ruth for a couple of weeks at least, we're going to try to cover 2 whole chapters of Ruth today, so we've got a lot of ground to cover, but this is a narrative story of this young lady and her family connections and kind of what was going on in her life at this point in time. And it's not one of those, like, there's not like a direct application where God is saying, you should do this. It's just, this is what happened. Kind of like with Judges, again. And so to take a look at this, because I want to also remember that this Who Am I study that we're going through applies again to not just the judges and their qualifications, but to Ruth and to Naomi and to Boaz and to the other people that are engaged in this story. And so the nice thing about this story is there's not really a villain. I like a good Bible story where there's not like somebody trying to murder you or oppress you or kill you, or it's just this wonderful story about the heritage and the lineage of this young lady Ruth. And we'll get to how all that rolls out in part 2 of this. But number 1 today is the backstory. So we're going to start there with Ruth chapter 1, starting in verse 1. It says, "Now it came to pass in the days of the judges, or days when the judges ruled, that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, or Elimelech, however you choose to pronounce it, and that name means God of the king. And the name of his wife, Naomi, which means pleasant." It's a very sweet, polite, pleasant name, Naomi. And the name of his 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, they were Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. Now, from this gentleman who was named God of the king and his wife whose name was Pleasant, they named their 2 kids Sick and Failing. Literally, Mahlon means sick, and Chilion means failing or faltering or unable to do what's necessary. How'd you like to have those kind of names? Now, again, there was a famine, and we don't know how long the famine lasted, but there was a time when you're just going to name your kids after whatever's going on, kind of in current events, because they may have thought that their kids were going to be sick because there was a famine and they was just going to die, or that he was going to fail, like the crops had failed, and so that there was a lot of hopelessness associated with just naming these kids. And so just to give you a couple of background notes here. So it says that they were Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah, or Ephathrites, however you want to pronounce it. So the Ephrathites were people from Ephrath, or Ephratah, which you might have heard from the Christmas story, which the Bible tells us was associated with Bethlehem, which is just south of Jerusalem, about 5 or 6 miles. The word Ephrath in Hebrew means fruitful, and Bethlehem means house of bread. Most scholars believe that Ephrath and Bethlehem are actually 2 names for the same place, a view that's supported by Genesis 35:19 and Ruth 4:11. Most likely, Ephrath was the ancient name for the Canaanite city, and Bethlehem was the Jewish label for the same city. So just to give you an idea, so if it says they were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, they were from this area, but they were specifically from the center of the city of Bethlehem, which was in the tribe of Judah. Okay, it's called Bethlehem, Judah, because it was in the land that was acquired by the tribe of Judah, but it was also called Ephrath, so they were considered Ephrathites. Just so you know, they're not from a different place. They're not foreigners. They're actually Israelites. This is just some geography. And so in the middle here of verse 2, it says, "And they came into the country of Moab." Now, on the map there, on your outline, Moab was just on the other side of the Dead Sea, and you can see where Jerusalem is there at the top left of the map that's circled. And so they would have either traveled the 25 miles across the Red Sea from where they were, or it was about 60 miles around to the south where they could continue. I guess they could have gone around from the north, but that was a different kingdom that's just north of Moab. And it doesn't say where they went. It doesn't say what city they went to. It just says that they went to Moab, and they continued there. Verse 3. "And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left, and her 2 sons, and they took them wives of the women of Moab. The names of one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilion died, also both of them, and the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband." So the backstory here, Elimelech, because there's a famine in the land of Israel, moves to somewhere there's food. That makes total perfect sense, even though he wasn't supposed to. Right? There was a promised land. They were told to inhabit this land and stay on this land, but he took his family and moved them someplace, which is a natural human response to the need to be able to feed your children. Your children that you've already decided are sick and failing. Right? And so they moved to this other country. They moved to this other place. We don't have any idea how old they were, how this worked, but some point in time, 10 years has passed. The boys have been old enough now to be married, and they have taken wives of the children of Moab. Now, this was also one of those no-nos from the Israelites, because that's one of the things that Joshua told them when they were going to go into the land. It was like, listen, we got to go in and we got to wipe them all out and kill them all, because if we intermarry and intermingle with these other people, our culture will also be watered down and intermingled with this, and so our religion that'll be done too. There's the potential for other gods being brought in and idols to be brought in, and so we're not supposed to do this, right? And so Elimelech, though, just in this time of famine, didn't necessarily see the hand of God working, and so he took responsibility for his own family and moved to this other place where his sons then married these 2 women of Moab. There's a lot of poor choices going on in this. And what's one of the things I want to point out from the story of Ruth is that a lot of us in our lives have made some very poor choices. And they have had some very negative results. But as we go through this story, I want you to be able to see that just because humans make poor choices, that does not change the outcome in the way that God wants things to happen when people start making right choices. All right? Because when we start making right choices, when we start making godly choices, when we start making honorable choices, when we start making choices to follow and honor God, it doesn't negate the bad choices. Most of the time, it doesn't even undo the bad choices. It just changes the outcome. And so please take some encouragement from that, because we need to continue now down through the story. And I don't have any other passages today outside of the book of Ruth, because there's not really a lot of comparison to other passages of Scripture. So just know we're going to be in Ruth 1 and 2. We're going to try to get through both chapters, and we should be able to do that probably with spare time today. But you know me. So number 2, there were some emotional goodbyes. Ruth chapter 1, starting in verse 6. "And then she arose, Naomi, with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread." So at some point in that 10 years, there must have been a judge that changed the course of the nation of Israel to the point where now God is able to bless them again, and the famine is over, and now there's food back at home. And so Naomi says, we got food at the house, let's go back home. Right? Verse 7. "Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on their way to return unto the land of Judah. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead, and with me. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. Basically, go find the new husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. And they said to her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have an husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would you tarry for them till they were grown? Would you stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. So we'll pause there. So Naomi, who is a reasonably intelligent lady, says, Girls, listen, your husbands have died, my sons are dead. I'm going to go home to be with my family. I think you should do the same. Just go back to your mama's house. You can live with her. You can go back to your family, find another husband. You're still young enough. You can find a husband, have some babies, go live your lives. You don't have to worry about me anymore. I'm just going to go back home to my people. And the girls are like, but we're planning on coming with you. And she's like, listen, I don't have any more sons in my womb. I don't have any more kids to have. I'm too old to get a husband. Even if I was to get a husband tonight, and I was to get pregnant tonight, and have sons this year, are you going to stick around until they're old enough to marry you? Because you're going to have to wait a while, and you're not getting any younger, which is reasonable, perfectly reasonable. And so they had not had any children at this point that we're aware of, and so there weren't grandbabies involved or anything like that. But she says, just go back, go back to your family, go back home, find the husband, have some kids, live your life, do your thing. I'll be fine. I'm going to go home. Verse 14. And they lifted up their voice and wept again. That's that emotional goodbye. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law. Basically, she kissed her goodbye. And Ruth clave unto her. Ruth just held on. She said, I'm not letting go. Verse 15. And she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee. Don't ask me to leave, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go. And where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. So Ruth stands up and she says, Listen, I'm going to go with you because we don't know why. I wish we had a why. Well, I really do. Because neither of the choices was wrong. If she went back to her family, if she was allowed to do so, she had permission to do so, she would have been just fine as far as we know. If she stayed, that would be fine too, but we don't understand why her desire was to stay with Naomi. Now that her husband had died, now that the other men in the family had died, and it was just going to be these two women, except it speaks to the character of Ruth that she was willing to sacrifice her own life to take care of her mother-in-law, because she knew that in this point, Naomi was basically just going to go back home and die because she was not going to be able to take care of herself. And Ruth said, well, I'm not going to let that happen. And she says, I'm not going to return to my gods. I'm going to let your God become my God. I'm going to let your people become my people. I'm going to become like you. I just want to stay with you. And wherever you live, that's where I'm going to live. And wherever you die, that's where I'm going to die. Wherever they bury you, that's where I plan to be buried. And if anything else happens to separate me from you before I die, let God do all those things to me anyway. Basically, swear to God. Let God kill me if I violate this, if I violate my word. This is how committed that she was to making sure that she could do what she felt to be the right thing to do. Was it the right thing to do? Was it, or was it just simply, she could have gone either way and things would have turned out differently. But she decided to stay with Naomi. Okay. Nowhere in this does it say that God told her to do this. Nowhere in here does it say that there was a law that she had to do this. Nowhere in here does it say that anywhere does it record that this was, up to this point, before knowing the outcome, that there was any reason whatsoever for Ruth to follow this path. There just wasn't. This was her mother-in-law. I mean, ladies, think about that. How would you feel if your husband died about taking care of your mother-in-law and living with her and forsaking ever getting married again and just going to live with your mother-in-law because your mother-in-law needed help because she was an older lady? I'm just saying. Might be tough for some of us. It might. Right? And she gave her the out. And sister-in-law took it. And she was like, all right, I'm out. Love you guys. I'm going home. Right? And we never hear anything else about Orpah. She went back to Moab, fades off. We don't know whether she had kids, whether she had a family. She just fades after this into history. But there was something special about Ruth and her character. We don't know how old she was. We don't know how skilled she was at anything. All we know is that her heart told her, stay with Naomi. Take care of her. She may not have had a whole lot of family to go back to. We don't even know. But Naomi evidently said, I know you go back to the home of your mothers. Plural. All right? And sometimes we have emotional goodbyes. And I want to make sure I include this because that's the title of this particular point. Sometimes we have emotional goodbyes. Sometimes when people separate themselves from us, it is very emotional because sometimes we have to tell people to go away. Just like Naomi did. She said, listen, you guys don't need to come with me. You need to go someplace else so that for your benefit, you can go live and thrive in another place at another time with another group of people besides me because I'm just going to drag you down. Go live your life. Go do your thing. And that can be very emotional, especially for the person who's being told, go away. I mean, at some point, I remember this movie from the 80s called Harry and the Hendersons. I don't know if you guys remember this movie. This is John Lithgow and his family. They find Bigfoot, and they take him home, and they start to, I guess he gets hurt, they start to care for him, and they call him Harry, and so it's Harry and the Henderson family, right? So Harry and the Hendersons. But, spoiler alert from a 40-year-old movie, as they are moving through the film, they realize that if he stays with them, he's going to be in danger because there's people that are going to be looking for him and trying to capture him and probably going to kill him and study him, right? Because that was just kind of what they assumed scientists would do. I think we could probably still have that assumption. If somebody found Bigfoot, they would want to kill it so they could cut it apart and study it, at least eventually. Or at the very least, put it in a cage and do everything they could to, do tests on it. And it would be a horrible existence. And so at the end of the movie, Harry, who doesn't speak, he doesn't quite have all the grasp of all of the wonderful emotional range that human beings do. They go out into the woods, and he doesn't want to go back in the woods. He just wants to stay with him. And so the dad character has to basically start yelling and screaming and picking up rocks and sticks and trying to throw them at Harry to make sure that he would be upset and go away for his safety and for his protection. And this was a very emotional goodbye because the family's crying and the dad ends up crying and Harry's crying. Everybody's crying, right? Because that's just not the expected outcome. Well, in this situation, Orpah was crying, but she was crying long enough to kiss her mother-in-law goodbye and then go back home. But now she was going to be traveling alone to get back to wherever home was. Now, we don't know how far that was. They were still in the land of Moab at this point. But I just want you to understand that sometimes in your life, you got to let people go, especially if they're going to be toxic for you, if they're going to be dangerous for you. But sometimes you realize, and I know parents, we have to deal with this with our kids, sometimes you're going to have to just say, it's time for you to go be a grown-up all by yourself, because if you stay with me, you're going to stay trapped in a box, and you need to go live outside the box. You need to go do adult things on your own. And that can be very emotional. It can be very difficult to do that. You know, and so I want to make sure that you understand that, well, there's a story in the Bible that records basically the same thing. All right? And so Ruth and Naomi continue on, and Naomi eventually says, well, I'm not going to be able to talk you out of this, so all right, let's go. Number 3, there's a hard return. And as we're going through this, especially when we get into chapter 2, I want you to think that the folks at Hallmark that started writing the plots for Christmas movies have probably read the book of Ruth. Because, think about it, because this is the original story of a girl from out of town that comes back to visit under bad circumstances because she's just been widowed. She has to make a living for herself, so she goes to work at this farm. The farm owner takes notice of her, gives her all these extra blessings. She ends up doing a couple things, and they end up getting married and having kids. I mean, it's like, this is a Hallmark movie, really. I mean, it really is. Do what? There's what? There's nothing new under the sun. Yes, because, I mean, this is sorry, it's spoiler alerts for the book of Ruth. I think I just told you the whole plot. But we got some more details to get through. So, Ruth chapter 1, starting in verse 19. So they two went until they came to Bethlehem. So Naomi and Ruth returned until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass, when they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them. It was kind of a big deal. And they said, is this Naomi? And she said unto them, call me not Naomi, remember, which means pleasant. Call me Mara. Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. You know what Mara means? Bitter. And she continues, call me Mara, for the Lord hath dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, saying the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. Remember, we talked about barley a couple weeks ago. This is one of those times where the barley is being harvested. I don't think this was probably at the same time as Gideon, because remember, they were trying to hide all this stuff in Gideon, but they were still, barley was still one of those main crops. And so this return, Naomi was coming back basically in defeat. Now, the whole city was, it says the whole city was moved and recognized who it was, and now she's showing up by herself with this strange woman, this Moabite woman, who probably dressed different, probably had an accent. I always think it's funny, this is like the perfect science fiction area, because they all speak the same language, evidently, or they speak multiple languages. And so they come back, and Naomi is still like, why are you going to continue to call me pleasant? I'm not pleasant. I'm bitter. So why am I bitter? Because the Lord hath dealt bitterly with me. Who do you think Naomi was upset with? She seems to be upset with God, because God, she's blaming all this on God, because God has done this to me. The Lord brought me home again empty. And I'm the whole time I read this, I'm like, well, it's kind of your husband's fault. It wasn't God. This guy was violating the instructions of the Lord, and realize that there were still people in Bethlehem, which means they didn't die in the famine. And so there was some sort of preservation. Now, would the boys have died? Potentially as young children, but there's still, people lived, people survived, because there was a group of people to come back to. But the people seemed to be just happy to see him. Hey, it's Naomi. Is that Naomi? It's Naomi. Hey, look. They received her. And that's the great point about the way the Lord works also. Remember, there was a series of really poor decisions made for Naomi. She probably didn't even have a say. She was like, Elimelech was like, hey, we're leaving, we're moving, we're going to Moab. And she's like, you the boss. So she goes, and she leaves full. Why is she full? Because she has a husband and 2 boys. Bad things happen, and she has to come home. And the people that were in Bethlehem probably hadn't heard all of the other stories, because there's probably not a great rumor mill network of, oh, did you hear about Naomi and the boys? Yeah, all of her sons died. Oh, yeah. Until she gets back here by herself with this Moabite woman, and now they're like, I think that's Naomi, but what's going on? And so they have to find out this information. But they were still, it seems that it says that the whole city was moved about them. It kind of caused a stir where people came to receive them. And there's a lot to be said for this too, because sometimes going back somewhere that you don't want to go is a hard return. It is a hard thing to do, to go back somewhere that you don't want to be, to go back somewhere that you left thinking that you were going to be successful, realizing that while you were gone, you did not succeed, and now you have to come crawling back on your hands and knees, acknowledging that you were not successful, and hoping that you can find somewhere to start over. Prodigal son story, because you guys can remember that. Eventually the prodigal son came home because he knew that even as a servant in his father's house, he'd be doing better than a servant out in the wilderness, right? And so Naomi decided to come back because at least she heard that there was food there and that she could be a part of her own people again. Or she was just expecting to come back and die so that she could be buried there in Israel instead of being buried in Moab with her husband and her 2 boys. Now, church application. You miss church once, it's not usually a big deal, especially if you're just sick or you're out of town or you have to work. Miss church once and nobody's going to make a big deal, right? You're probably not even going to make a big deal. Hey, I missed church, I had to work, I was sick, I wasn't feeling good, there was stuff going on. All right, miss church twice in a row, and now you have a line established. 2 points, make a line. Right? And the farther that you go away from it, the harder it is to step back into it. 3rd week in a row, now it's not just a line, now it's a trend. 4th week in a row, now it's a pattern. And the farther away you go, people start to wonder what happened. People start to even, not necessarily wonder what happened to you, they're just kind of curious what happened, why are you not here? Why have you not come back? What's going on? Or they're just worried about you. But during that time, I've had people tell me this for years. Well, yeah, by the time I'd missed a couple of months, I just didn't feel like I could come back. Well, why not? Why not? I don't know. I just felt like I couldn't be there. No, nobody told you couldn't come to church. Right? I mean, nobody told you couldn't come to church. This is a self-imposed exile. Right? Until you come back in the church, and I have given new instructions about this continually of, you come back in and it's been a few weeks since you've been here, that our guys are not supposed to walk up and offer you a visitor's card or make jokes about you needing a visitor's card, because it's just stupid. Okay? Especially if you've been coming for a long time. But it's one of those things where some of these hard returns it's this anxiety about having to answer the same questions again and again and again. Well, where you been? How you been? What's going on? What's new in your life? Where's this other person that didn't come back with you? How? All these questions. But how much of that, okay, first of all, anybody ever experienced this besides me? No, 3 people in the room. Okay, I guess I can move on from this point. But as a church, here's what I want us to make sure that we do. Okay, I want to make sure that we do this. When somebody comes back in the door that hasn't been here in potentially years, how do we treat them? How should we? We should be excited that they came back. We should be overjoyed. Now, What happens, though, if the person that left kind of a negative mark on their way out? And it wasn't a great exit. They've never been told they couldn't come back. But what happens to somebody that left in a huff and made some noise on their way out and didn't leave correctly? Okay, I'm not trying to set you guys up for something, I promise. I just want to make sure that as we're looking at this, do what? Well, the idea is to welcome people back with open arms, but what if, there's all sorts of these circumstances that we can go through, and I'm trying to be... Yeah, I will say this. I have told some people that it would be best if they found another church to go to. I've told some people that. I've also told a couple people in my life, before you come back, we need to talk. The two of us need to talk. I've told a number of people that. Before you come back, we need to talk. Because I got to know why. I really need to know why you want to come back here. Because when you left, you made such a horrible stink about the fact that that there was something wrong with our church. There's something wrong with me as the pastor. That if you're going to come back, we're going to have to get that sorted out. Right? But there's also folks that just been a few weeks and I just didn't feel like coming. So now I feel guilty about not being there. And now I got to walk back in and face everybody, and they're going to know that I feel guilty. No, we're not. We're going to be happy to see you, just like the people here in Bethlehem. And so, as a church, I want to make sure that we hold on to this idea and this concept that as people are coming back, potentially, if there's somebody you haven't seen in a while, if there's anybody that walks in the front door of the church, we should have an attitude of excitement that somebody's at church, period. That somebody came to church. Okay, so what if it's like a scary-looking biker group decides to show up at church and leathers and skulls and profanity on their vests and tattoos and whatever, and they come walking in and they look like they're going to kill us all? You walk up and you shake their hand and you tell them welcome. Coffee's over there. There's donuts maybe today. Bathroom's over there. Church is in here. We're going to start at 10:30. If you have any questions, let me know. Anything I can do for you? Most of those people are the kindest, nicest people you've ever met in your life. They just look terrifying. How about this? What if a group of people decides to show up at church someday, never been here before, and they are alt-left, where they are visibly like displaying a particular type of pride. They have, they just are not, they're just not who we would normally expect to show up in our little Baptist church in Grain Valley, right? That they have homosexual slogans, transgender slogans, and their hair's all funky colors, and they've got piercings and again tattoos, and they've got all the things that would normally stop you on the street and go, I don't know that I would ever have a reason to talk to that person. But there's 8 of them that pull up and show up in church. They're just here. They just show up. Same day as the biker dudes. Hopefully not on the same day as the biker dudes. That could go poorly. Not because of us. But our response should be, hey, good morning. You want some coffee? There's coffee over here. There's a bottle of water over here if you need something. There's donuts. The restrooms are over there. Church starts at 10:30. If you have any questions, let me know. As soon as I can find them, let me introduce you to our pastor. Somebody shows up in their 40s, suit and tie, carrying a Bible, looks very well put together, hair is immaculate, And they come into the church and they just kind of stand right at the door. Kind of like this. And you can tell, oh, it's one of those people. Are you going to automatically just kind of throw onto them your judgment, expecting them to be the judgy one? Because sometimes when people are dressed nicely, and sometimes people look very religious, then sometimes we just kind of assume that they're going to be judging everything that we do and say here. What should our response be? Hey, good morning. It's nice to see you. I'm glad you're here. Coffee's over here. We got donuts. The bathrooms are over there. Auditorium's here. Church starts at 10:30. We'd be happy to answer any questions if you have. And as soon as I can find him, I'll introduce you to our pastor. Shouldn't that be our response to anybody that walks in the door? What if it's a cop? Same thing. Yay. What if it's IRS agents?
I draw the line there.
I draw the line. Yeah, it's yeah. Good morning. Yeah, coffee's over there. Right. Trust me, I'm going to introduce you to the pastor as soon as I find him. Do me like that, right? But that's the thing. We have to make sure that we kind of mimic the people of Bethlehem at this point. That we are moved. We are moved spiritually and emotionally anytime somebody steps through the front doors of this church, regardless of who it is. Are there some people that we're going to be a little more cautious around? Are there some folks that I might look at and have some of the guys go, hey, keep an eye on that guy because something don't sit right? Absolutely. Are there times where I would point out to somebody, hey, Luke, if you're behind the desk, this person does not get behind the desk under any circumstances, period. They could be the nicest, kindest, gentlest person in the world. I'm going to make sure they got some coffee and a donut, and they know where the bathrooms are, and the church starts at 10:30, and hi, I'm Chris, I'm the pastor. It's very nice to meet you. Come on in, find a seat. Sit in the back. Those are the expensive seats. They always fill up first. You're going to want one of those, right? But Naomi goes beyond this. Is like, don't treat me well. Don't treat me nice. Don't call me pleasant. I'm bitter, and I'm ready to be bitter. Just call me bitter. Because we're going to have some of that too. Somebody comes back in, and we're like, oh, man, it's great to see you. Yeah, I really don't want to be here. But I'm here. Okay, well, church is at 10:30. Coffee's over there. Do you need some coffee? Do you need 2 coffees? I really wish people would just leave me alone. Well, go sit in the front row. I promise people will leave you alone. Okay, there's 2 of you this morning. Okay, sit in the second row, all right? But still, it's... We cannot control how somebody else thinks or feels about it. We can control our behavior. We can control our actions. We can control how we respond to the fact that God has led someone back through our doors, whether they like it or not. And we have to understand that it could be harder for them to be here than it is for us to have them here. Number 4. Let's move past that. Everybody needs one of these. This is the key point in the Hallmark movie. There's a wealthy relative. Ruth 2, starting in verse 1, says that Naomi had a kinsman of her husband, a mighty man of wealth of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. And now Boaz means inner strength. It kind of translates to something. He had strength of character, right? That's what his name means. And Ruth, the Moabitess, said unto Naomi, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him, in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, go, my daughter. And she went and came and gleaned in the field of the reapers. And her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was the kindred of Elimelech. Okay, so in verse 22 of chapter 1, there is an interesting horticultural note. And then in verse 2 of chapter 2, there's an interesting horticultural note. Did you guys catch the difference? Okay. Into chapter 1, it says that they came at the beginning of the barley harvest. And then it says in verse 2 that she's going to go glean ears of corn. This was probably in, 2000 BC or so. Maybe not quite that far back. 1100 BC, 1500 BC, something like that. When was corn introduced to the Middle East? Does anybody know where corn came from? Mexico specifically, Central America, and then it spread to North and South America and did not get introduced to Europe and then Asia until after Columbus, which was when? 1492 when he showed up here, but even then it was decades after that corn hadn't even been domesticated in North America at this time. So how could she be harvesting corn? And does that mean that there's an error in the Bible? No, because by the time we get to 1611, when they're translating this, so 200 years or 150 years after, 110 years after Columbus, corn had been introduced, but corn became a generic term just for some type of grain. Okay, so anytime it talks about corn in the Bible, there was no corn in the Bible. It just means the word corn got used in English to represent some unknown type of grain. Whether it was barley or wheat or some other thing that they had, it was just the concept of just a generic grain. Okay, I think it's interesting that it says specifically she was going to glean ears of corn. It just means she was going to take the whole thing. She's not out there picking individual pieces of barley or wheat off of the stalks. She was just taking the whole thing. Okay, because you could call I don't even know what it's called. If you have wheat that grows or barley that grows and it has seeds on the top, it's like the grass that grows too tall in your yard and all of a sudden has that fluffy stuff on the top. That's the seeds. If you pick that off, you have an ear of grass, so to speak. And so, I don't want you to think, I just, little things I noticed, that she was there actually picking barley, and we get into that later, but it was just, she was just going to go find something to pick anywhere, and it could have been any generic crop that was growing. She just needed to go find something, ask me after church. She just needed to go find anything that would grow that she could use for food and potentially to sell to make some money to buy the other things that they needed. All right? So please don't do like I did and get too hung up on the fact that it says corn. And I know I just spent 10 minutes explaining my hang up on it saying corn, but at the beginning of the chapter it says that, okay, there was a wealthy man that was part of Elimelech's family. His name was Boaz. But then in verse 2 it changes tack, and it's just like, and so then Ruth went to work in a field. And it just so happens that she ended up on Boaz's field. She was not out there looking for this guy. She probably didn't even know who it was. In fact, we find out later she didn't even know who it was, didn't realize that there was this wealthy relative. She just goes to pick stuff out of a field and just happens to end up exactly where God needed her to be. Almost by accident. Almost maybe it was a coincidence. I don't know. I'm still struggling with the idea of coincidence. Was it a coincidence or was it an appointment that God had made for her? Who knows? But she ends up in the field belonging to Boaz. Now, number 5, we have a kindness that's returned. And this is where, all right, so if you're writing your Christmas movie, this is where it starts. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered to him, the Lord bless thee. And then said Boaz unto his servant that was set over the reapers, who's that chick? Whose damsel is this? I'm sorry. Who does this woman belong to, basically? And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, it is the Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and hath continued even from morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. So Boaz, being the person who is involved and engaged in his farm, notices that there's a new person. Again, she was probably dressed very differently than the rest of the people that were there picking the fruit, picking the food. And so he's like, so who's that and who does she belong to? Whose woman is that? Basically, is the question that he's asking. And his reapers are like, oh, well, she's the girl from Moab that came back with Naomi. She came up to us this morning and asked if she could follow behind the reapers and just kind of pick up the gleanings, just the stuff that they leave behind, so that she could make sure she could take care of her and Naomi. And she has been here all day. She has only spent a few minutes in the house, probably meaning she had to go to the bathroom or needed to get a drink of water or something. But this is who this was. Verse 8, then said Boaz unto Ruth. So now he finally talks to her. Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have not I charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go into the vessels and drink of that which the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, and bowed herself to the ground, and said unto him, Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing as I am a stranger? And Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother, and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not heretofore. And then he says, verse 12, The Lord recompense thy work, and a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings thou art come to trust. I love that. And so before we move into verse 13, so here's the thing. So Boaz then goes and speaks to this woman, and he says, hey, just so you know, I want you to hear me. I'm the guy in charge. It's my farm. Here's what I want to happen. I want you to pay attention to where my people are harvesting. Any of those places, those are my fields, and you are welcome in those. So I want you to just follow my people. I want you to make sure that as the other women are out here picking stuff, you go pick with them. Take what you need. Take whatever you pick. When everybody stops to get some water, I want you to be able to get water from the same place. I've already told the guys that are in charge of the crop here not to bother you, that you have my permission to be here. It says that he told them not to touch her. I don't think there was a danger of her necessarily being like assaulted or molested. I think it was just, don't punish her for being here. Don't go after her with a whip or a stick and kick her out of here, because she now has my blessing, not just my permission, my blessing to be here. I've told them, if she needs some water, give her water out from the same water everybody else is drinking. She doesn't have to go pick her, she doesn't have to go draw her own out of the well. Just let her do it. Just treat her just like one of my employees, one of the other workers that's here, because I know the story. And he goes and talks to her. He's like, listen, I want you to know I'm going to start taking care of you, because I want you to understand what you did in taking care of my family member, Naomi. She was like my cousin-in-law, right? So Elimelech was probably a cousin. Elimelech's wife then became a cousin by marriage. And so Naomi then was considered part of the same family. And Boaz was like, listen, I know the kind of honorable things that you have done to take care of this woman. Even after her husband died, and after your husband died, after her kids died, you stayed with her, you left your family, you left your father and mother, you left your culture, you left your people, and you came here just to take care of her. And now I am telling you, on behalf of the Lord God of Israel, we want for your honor to be returned, because you honored Naomi. Let the Lord himself honor you with all of the blessings and provisions that he possibly could. I mean, that's pretty cool. And I'm sure Ruth was just shocked to get this information, because she was probably expecting for the owner to come out there and kick her off of his land, because they would have had other people come back after them and collect that rest of that grain that had fallen on the ground, because they didn't want it to go bad. Or they would have left it, and honestly what she was doing was legal, because it was anything that the reapers miss, and they were going to be very, very particular. The gleanings that would have been left would have just been the stuff that fell off. And so she was just going behind them, picking up what they thought was trash. Now, it was still valid, it was still food, it was still good, the grain that they were harvesting, but it was something that when they gathered up the sheaves, A couple of pieces here and there might have fallen off until they cut the next one and grabbed a few, and so a few pieces may have fallen off. All she was doing was going back and picking up the pieces that they missed, that they didn't pick up. She was working to try to get enough off of what everyone else just left behind. And was going to be satisfied with that. Because she knew she hadn't talked to anybody. She didn't have a job. She was poor. And the Israelite law said, if your reapers are doing this and they drop something on the ground, leave it. Don't pick it up. Because if they've dropped it on the ground, let it stay on the ground so that the poor people can come behind you and gather that so that they can have something to eat. That was part of the law. Now, changes kind of how you look at lunch. Because we don't have poor people walking behind us, waiting at the door for our leftovers. Anything that you don't want to eat in your refrigerator that's been opened, you tried it, you just didn't like it, and so you're going to throw it in the trash. Well, I mean, we throw food away all the time. I mean, we used to get like boxes of salad mix from the store, like the plastic box of salad mix or a bag of salad mix. And of course we wouldn't eat it. We would wait 2 weeks until it went bad and then throw the whole thing in the trash. Right? Anybody else ever had to do that? Yeah, all of us probably. Right? Or sometimes you just get something and it's already gone bad and you're like, I just bought this. I'm taking this back to the store. Where in this day and age, it would have been there would have been a series of poor people that would just come behind after grocery shopping was done, and anything that didn't get bought in the store that day, they would just be able to take home for free. Sorta. I mean, if you get my analogy, right? And so Ruth was just going to go be a poor person trying to take care of her and Naomi, not really knowing if she was even going to get enough to make a whole meal out of. There's no guarantees. If those reapers were very, very good at their job, they would collect most of it. Maybe a few parts that would have broken off or fallen off. And so Boaz recognizes this, and he's like, listen, here's what I want you to do. I don't need you necessarily to go behind everybody. I want you to be able to collect the things that you need to make sure you can take care of you and Naomi. Verse 13. Then she said, let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for that thou hast comforted me, and for thou that hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thine handmaidens. And Boaz said unto her, at mealtime come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in the vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn. And she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. And let fall also some of the handfuls on purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them and rebuke her not. And so Boaz goes beyond just, okay, you can stay in our fields and follow us. He says, also when it's time for the workers to come and eat lunch, or when they have a meal at the end of the day, I want you to know that you can come with them and eat also. Take the bread that you have, dip it in the same vinegar that they dip it in. I'm going to treat you just like one of my employees, but everything that you harvest, you can take with you. You can just keep. If they have to turn it in, I'm going to give them a wage. You just take whatever you harvest, and you can just keep it. And then it says, and he reached her parched corn. Basically, he took food in front of everybody and handed it to her to make sure that they could see that he was giving her permission to eat. In fact, he was giving her food, like right there for her to eat. And then he's like, so then he went, and it says that she ate, and she ate till she was full, right? And then she left. But when she went back out to glean some more, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, hey, listen, let her glean even among the sheaves. So let her take things, even like that you've already collected. Let her have some of that if she wants it. And don't get mad. Don't correct her. Also, as you are collecting these things, what I want you to do is if you take up a bundle of these stalks of wheat that you're getting ready to bundle up and set over here so that we can collect all of the grain off of them, I want you to occasionally just take a handful and drop it. Because if it's been dropped, it's fair game. So just basically Boaz is saying, listen, hook her up. Okay? Make sure she's got what she needs. Make sure she has more than she needs, because she has done so much more than she needed to do out of honor and respect for her mother-in-law. And so, again, this goes back to Boaz's character, and it's his prayer was that the Lord would repay her for her work and give her a full reward from the Lord. Why? Because under his wings, she came to trust. She put herself under the God of Israel. And so Boaz's prayer was, well, then let the God of Israel be the one to bless you. And here's another application for us as Christians. As we read through this and as we look at this, sometimes when new people come in, not just people that have been here before, but so Ruth was like a first-time visitor. And so if she comes in, a lot of times we're going to take it upon ourselves to make sure that we give people what they need and bless them. And we've said that especially when it comes to benevolence. So if we have a family that's in need, they come to church, they express they just need some groceries. They need a tank of gas. They need something, because this has happened to us for years since we started the church. My only qualification that I put on folks is we will help in certain situations like that after a church service. Call me on a Thursday afternoon. So we're traveling through town. We're out of gas. We're just trying to find somebody to help us get some gas so we can get down to our house. Unfortunately, only time we do that kind of thing is after somebody's attended a church service. So Sunday, if you're still here, if you come to church, we can talk about it after church. Why? Because we can bless people with physical things, but those physical things are going to be gone. Tank of gas is going to be gone in a couple hours. We want them to make sure that they're at least offered the spiritual things as well. Because then, you need groceries for your family? I understand. There are other agencies that do that specific thing. If you want those things from a church because you're expecting us to just be a charity and just give to you, either A, you need to be members of our church. Any of you guys call me on a Thursday and say, hey, Chris, we need some groceries at my house. I'm going to say, I get off at 4:30, I'll meet you somewhere. Because you're members of our church. And we're going to take care of you. And I'll probably go beyond that to say, hey, leadership team, because I have one of those group meetings, these people are in some need. If anybody has anything that can help, maybe contact them and find out how else we can be of assistance. Hey guys, on the other group me, this person has a financial need and they need some money to pay a bill right now. And all of a sudden, money just starts pouring in from people that we just want to make sure that we get those bills taken care of. We've done that dozens of times around the church for our members. But if it's not somebody who's a member of our church, I've never seen them before, they are a stranger, we'll help. But we're not going to help without being able to offer spiritual things too. The eternal things. Because the eternal things are much more important than the temporary physical things. You need both. Don't get me wrong. You need both. You know, I want you to go to heaven, but I don't want you to starve to death while I'm sitting here watching, and I don't want to watch you go to heaven. All right? So, in this situation, Boaz was just simply saying, let God reward you for your work. And that's going to be our position. We're going to let God reward somebody for their work. How's God going to act in this day and age? Through the church. All right. Number 6. We'll be done with this. There is a continued blessing that goes on well after this first chance meeting. So Ruth chapter 2, starting in verse 17. So she gleaned in the field until even, and beat out that she had gleaned. And it was about an ephah of barley. So, I thought it was corn. Well, no, it's actually just barley. Let's just stick with barley. But, so it says at the end of the day, she took everything that she had gleaned, and she went ahead and processed it. Okay, when it says that she beat it out, it means that she pulled the kernels off of the stalks, got rid of the stalks, and then they had a process of smacking these things together to release the seeds from the casings on the outside of them. It's separating the wheat from the chaff is how it was referred to in the New Testament. A lot of times it's going to involve going up to a hillside or a hilltop where it's windy, and after you've kind of crushed it and beaten it to get the parts separated, toss it up in the air, the wind would blow the lighter parts away, and the heavier seeds would land back on the blanket or in the basket, whatever she was using. Okay? So when it says that she did all of that on the same day. So she was harvesting, and then she was processing, even at evening when it was getting dark. And it was about an ephah of barley. And so I don't know what that measurement is. It was enough. It was let's just say a bushel basket. How about that? And she took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned, and she brought forth and gave her that she had reserved after she was sufficed. So basically, not only did she have the grain that she had harvested, she also had extra lunch that she basically took home in a doggy bag. Because it says that, when she had sufficed from lunch, that she gave Naomi part of that food that she already had. Verse 19. And her mother-in-law said unto her, where did you do this? Where hast thou gleaned today? And where wroughtest thou? Where did you get all this stuff done? Blessed is he that did take knowledge of thee. I mean, that's a pretty good way to look at this. She's like, how did you do this in one day? This is your first day. How did you do this in one day? Where did you go? Who helped you? Whose field did you go to? I mean, there also might have been some accusation hiding that of what did you have to do to get this? Potentially. But then she ends up with, because whoever allowed you to do this deserves a special blessing. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and she said, this man's name with whom I wrought today is Boaz. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, blessed be he of the Lord, who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. And Naomi said unto her, the man is near kin of us, near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. And Ruth the Moabitess said, he said unto me also, that thou shalt keep fast by my young men until they have ended all my harvest. And Naomi said unto Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that thou go out with his maidens, that they may meet thee not in any other field. So she kept fast by the maidens of Boaz to glean until the end of the barley harvest and of the wheat harvest, and dwelt with her mother-in-law. So basically, Ruth relays the information that says, listen, it was Boaz, and he told me I could continue to do this with his maidens, with the people that he pays to do this, until the end of all of the harvest. Not just the end of the barley harvest, the end of all the harvest. Because I know we mentioned this before, that barley matures before wheat, and so it says that she was able to stay with them through the barley harvest and through the wheat harvest. And that she's lived with Naomi the whole time. She just dwelt with her, but there was this blessing. But part of what Naomi has to say is there's more going on here. She says, listen, it's fascinating that you ended up with Boaz's property, because Boaz is a near kinsman. Why is that important? Well, it's important because of the dead husband. We're going to talk about that some next week. But the idea of this near kinsman was, well, if someone dies, then if a husband died, then the next nearest kinsman was allowed, if he chose to take that woman as his wife, and then their first child gets dedicated to the dead husband. Basically, it becomes like it was his kid, so that husband would have offspring, and we'll see that as we get into this conversation about how Naomi responded. But since we're done with chapter 2 here, I want to make sure that we don't miss out on this. It's that there is blessing going on here. There's continued blessing going on because Ruth was able to stay and continue to work, and the fact that this was one of our next kinsmen was interesting because Naomi recognizes the familial relationships, because they would have had a lot of cousins. Just all these families, because they were all from the same family, they all lived in the same town, they all were part of the same system, and they all knew each other, and they knew who Naomi was, they knew who her husband was, and they knew that he was related to all these other people, because they were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah. That's just where they all stayed. And that's a very important thing that comes up next time we meet to talk about Ruth. That's why they call it a cliffhanger. Okay, now, but I just want to make sure that we're catching through some of this story, that the grace of God, the mercy of God, the provision of God, the blessing of God was not contingent on the bad decisions Elimelech made, that all of those things that Naomi pointed out were now being undone because of the faithfulness of one young lady. And that since she decided to stay faithful and remain true to Naomi, which she didn't have to do, God honored that. And so, we're going to continue to talk about Ruth coming up, and it's might be 2 or 3 weeks actually. So just so you know, so stay tuned for that. And not sure exactly how to give an invitation, so we're just going to pray. Lisa's going to come and lead us, close us in a song, and we're going to call it a day. All right? Well, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the story of Ruth, and for the amazing things that you did in her life and the amazing ways that you worked out exactly how that was supposed to go. As we get into the conclusion of this, just to see that we're still telling this story because of, not just because of who she was, but because of how she followed you and because of how she followed Naomi, Lord, and all of the things that Boaz did, and how that relationship worked together, and how their history is recorded because of the offspring that they had and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. And so, Lord, I pray that as we continue to study through this passage in Ruth, that you would give us understanding, that you would give us wisdom, and that we would see your hand in all of this. We love you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, if I would go ahead and stand, and we will close in a song. I can do this because I'm the pastor. Don't forget to tell Susan happy birthday. And Chris, his birthday was yesterday, so happy birthday to Chris as well. And Tony and Michaela's anniversary is tomorrow, so we can wish them a happy anniversary as well.